now were struggling so much, that they would be spending their time after George Floyd to be making jokes about nooses and to be defending it and to be insulting everyone. And it's the worst thing I've ever seen the neighborhood council ever do, honestly. And I think both Chris and Tad should resign.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Elizabeth Garcia, and just to remind everybody, we are talking right now on the procedure for censure and removal, and then the next item is going to be discussing what actions this council should or should not take to have a forum to address this. This is all procedural. You're welcome to say what you want to say, but that is, what is germane to the subject to advance the discussion. Okay. What did I just call out? Caleb? Oh.
Hi, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I think having worked closely with you all, I have a relationship. I do a lot of organizing in the community over there, so I've interfaced with a lot of these folks that have been implicated in this. And having looked at the threads, I know that we're having a discussion specifically about censure. And so my recommendation, since it sounds like maybe these folks are not willing to resign, is that I would encourage you to exercise everything you can in regards to this. I've read through the policy, and it looks like you can actually concurrently submit, you can put someone in censure and also go ahead and write a letter of removal that can be considered at your next meeting. So I would consider that strongly. I just wanted to make that recommendation because they just have to have 30 days prior notice for removal, so you can do those things concurrently. Just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go back then and ask if there's any other comment from the committee on this before we move to the next item. Tyler, go ahead.
Per what Caleb just said, is that something that we know definitively one way or the other, or that we need to look into further to see if that is a possibility?
I threw that out there in a discussion with the city attorney. Could we like, in theory, even put a censure and then a removal and have them one after the other? And it was very much like, no. The idea is that you censure someone, and the express purpose is they have the opportunity to correct. So it's possible, but if you have the removal lined up before the censure vote, it probably, I don't think it will actually be effective.
Sure. Okay.
We can look at how to make it. It depends on the timing of how the dates fall in the month too.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other committee comment? I'm gonna very briefly reopen public comment. Alessandro Umana.
Hi, I was listening into the conversation on censorship and giving Tad an opportunity to correct his behavior. But Tad has had many years to correct his behavior. He's been on this neighborhood council since I was in the neighborhood council back in 2015. I've been a resident of Echo Park since 1994, and he's had plenty of time to correct his behavior. He has a history of doing this within the Echo Park Neighborhood Council, and the Echo Park Neighborhood Council has a history of being actually aggressive towards women of color, people of color. So I wanted to make that note that this is not a new behavior from Tad, and a continuation of a behavior from not just himself, but this entire neighborhood council. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I see a couple hands. I'm going to briefly get through public comment on this, and then we're going to move to the next item. What? It's disappeared. EP resident. Okay, hold on. Sorry with the Zoom. Okay, go ahead. EP resident.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
You said that this is in regard. Excuse me, I have a speech impediment, have difficulty speaking. But you mentioned something about and to make amends or prove themselves to the community. Well, Tad just posted an hour before this meeting another smarmy, snarky remark about how he is the victim of not being understood by the I guess the intellectually challenged, but yes, he hasn't proving himself even an hour before this meeting. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, okay, looks like with that, I'm going to move on to, and that was a discussion item only. Hold on, I see one more hand, and then now I don't. Oh, Annie, I guess, very briefly, Annie, if you want to speak again, Annie Wyrick, we're trying to keep it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just think it's disgusting that he would even get a chance to correct racism and like performing racist rhetoric like this. It's just like doing blackface. It's just like putting someone it's just like putting his knee on someone's neck. It's disgusting. It's deplorable. I just like you guys not being like angered and just like fuming. I don't understand how it's like the complacency is like, it makes me so upset and so emotional. Again, like I really don't understand it. Like I get that it's like politics and whatever, and you guys have to follow these protocols. But in this day and age, I feel like so many.
Oh, but I lost you. All right. Okay, I'm gonna, you know what, I'm gonna move on to the next item. And everyone will have a chance to comment on the next item again as we go forward. So with that, we are on to item 4. Sorry?
Somebody has their hands in
They've already spoken once on this item. Okay. I'm not gonna call people twice at this point. Okay, so we're gonna go to item 4. Everyone will have a chance to go around again for each item, everyone in the public, okay? So that's the way we're doing this. So item 4 is where we're gonna talk about what we as a neighborhood council within our very restricted rules can do to provide a forum, discussion and possible action regarding an appropriate forum or format to address community concerns raised by these board members' conduct, including the social media posts and the petition. There's a couple suggestions here for thought. One is to discuss at a regular or a special meeting the general applicability of the Code of Conduct, which is an across the board Department of Neighborhood Empowerment policy, and the Code of Civility, which is a slightly different version of that we've written into our standing rules, and what expectations we would have for board members' conduct, and writing new or amending our current rules to go forward if they're not specific enough or they're not, not discussing the type of conduct we want to see, because right now, frankly, they're pretty vague. And so that would be a discussion that we could have with a motion to write new rules and then see what passes or doesn't pass the city attorney, and to describe generally what we expect from board members. That's one possible option. And this is not either or, everyone. This is another is to hold a forum or forums on racial justice, cultural sensitivity. We already have a proposal in the works about some of this and the NC's role and how we can address these issues. And then a third possible item is whether we're going to discuss specific board member conduct. That has been the subject of complaints apart from a censure or removal motion. For instance, if we wanted to discuss the petition or weigh in on it, this was, I agendized these as items to discuss. I'll tell you, I just, speaking to the city attorney an hour ago, they're very clear that discussing board member conduct outside the context of a censure motion is totally out of our jurisdiction. We can talk about whether we want to do that anyway, but that is, that's the general guidance I'm giving you. These are options. We can talk about others. I'm going to open it up briefly to committee comment to just get an idea, or if there's a motion, and then I'll open it up to the public again. So, Tyler.
Just to speak to it, doing something like a forum on racial justice or cultural sensitivity seems like something that is appropriate to do, not in response to a concern raised by the community. It seems better to focus on the concern being raised, and then later do sensitivity training, but not as a curative, instead as a preemptive thing. Like, that's just generally what we ought to be doing, things like that. But in terms of what has been raised and what people's concerns are, frankly, putting members of our board through racial sensitivity training when they are people of color who already are experiencing what is the problem, doesn't seem like it is serving them or our community. So I think I understand that what you're saying is there can't be a discussion about the specific thing outside of a censure motion. That to me seems like getting the censure motions up and present so that can then be discussed seems like the most immediate way to lance the specific problem. Beyond that, trainings or forums and updating rules, I do agree are important and necessary to do, but I don't think that they're useful curatives for this. I think they're better just things we ought to be doing anyway.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, I think the idea was not so much a training, that might be something else, but it was also to have a forum to hear community concerns about racial justice, and then talk about how the board can work harder to help those aims. And also the idea of a cultural sensitivity forum, which is overlapping, was also something that was working its way through our committee already. And I don't think it was necessarily to train the board members specifically as much as a forum for the community and a dialogue. And we could have trainings as well. So these are all things on the table. So, but I hear what you're saying. Any other committee comments?
This is Tad. Darcy, may I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, it seems to me the agenda item is two different things, and it does seem, with the actions of board members quite recently, as well as the responses that we can actually undertake, that a discussion of the code of conduct would be valid at this point. A lot of people have questions regarding their reach and what's appropriate and what's not. And for the kinds of things that people have been doing, and it's now probably half the board that have done things that are questionable. It may be worth having a meeting to discuss that and figure out where the line is, and going forward to know specifically where that is, because it is kind of vague.
Okay. And I guess I will just say, in case I might have forgotten my opening remarks, we've had complaints about, we've had direct complaints to the board, I think about one board member. We've seen the petition about 3. I've seen other things when I look around social media and see things. I've heard from other board members about other board members' comments that I've not like specifically named people, but there are a lot of other conduct that is possibly at issue here. And the city attorney has cautioned that if you start to make a motion about one person and you don't do it about the other, not about the merits of what they did, but about what rises to board conduct versus non-board conduct, there's an issue of equity. So the problem with agendizing a discussion without censure motions is that then there's a lot of editorial leeway about like what we're going to put on and talk about, and then are we going to call out like Tad said, like 8 to 10 board members for arguably questionable conduct, some of which has not been objected to by the community, that according to the city attorney's advice is the most regulable, not bad or offensive, but subject to regulation. So it's a little bit of a quagmire, but open to what people think. Thomas, and then maybe Tyler, and then we'll go to the public.
I guess I just wanted some clarity on what 8 to 10 people had done. I wasn't aware that it was anything like that.
Well, we're talking about issues of when you speak on behalf of the board on what's ostensibly a private social media page. If you just say your personal opinion and you don't speak as a member of the board and you don't discuss board conduct and you're talking to members of the community, the general guidance I'm getting from the city is that's sort of off limits. And then the gray area becomes when you speak as a member of the board, discuss board activity, that's gray. When you do something in a meeting or you send an email from your EPNC email, that is way closer to something that we can say you need to follow the code of conduct. So there have been a lot of statements on social media where people are, say this is my personal opinion, then they talk about what's board conduct, arguably a violation. There's a lot of gray area. So I'm saying if we're going to go there and have a discussion, it's going to get really messy, and we're going to run everything through the city attorney. It's a possibility because I guess I put this on the agenda I don't want to be saying we can only do this and we're not hearing the community concerns, but there's a lot of issues with equity here, and not just what people are upset about, what the most, the loudest voices are. If we're going to talk about what people have done wrong, we may have to talk about what everyone's done wrong. If it's a censure motion, we can deal with only what is a formal censure motion.
Okay.
Tyler.
Part of it might be I'm not quite sure how equity is being defined, but it seems to me if there are to use the number, I understand this isn't how you used it. There are 8 to 10 members of our board that stakeholders have raised complaints about. Then personally, I think we should discuss the 8 to 10. Like if any stakeholder complaint, I think absolutely warrants discussion and following. If it's board member to board member complaint or things like that, that seems to me on a different scale of what is at stake, because we really run the risk if even one stakeholder is raising a complaint and we're not responding to it or giving them a chance to speak to that, then we are not allowing them to have a voice in this. As far as I know, there's no such thing as a way to recall, like do a recall petition on a neighborhood council member. So, and if what we're saying is the only way to remove somebody is under these very specific guidelines, and outside of that, you have to keep a person on the neighborhood council until their term has ended, that seems counter to the spirit of public office and like, again, stakeholder investment and interest. So I understand that the city attorney is always going to be presenting the most conservative viewpoint in terms of legal protections, but I think it is important for us to be mindful of we're here to represent the residents of Echo Park. And if the residents of Echo Park are expressing concerns, I think we have to be listening to those and showing that we're listening to them and show that we are responsive to them. Those are my thoughts.
Okay. And I guess, just thinking like, I take your point where there's a board member or stakeholder. I guess if we get one complaint from a stakeholder, one response is every time a stakeholder complains about conduct of any board member, we could just say, here's the censure and removal policy, convince 3 board members. I don't think that's the best way to go, and sort of maybe try to resolve it first and have a dialogue, which is what we're here for. Instead of saying you have to go this horribly formal route and then everyone entrenches on their side. So, but I think we should think about like maybe we should talk about if we do get complaints from stakeholders, like what is the response? I mean, there's a lot of gray area here that we're all trying to make up as we go along. So maybe we should write some better rules about what we do think when we have this issue, how we can respond, what options we can give them before we go to censure. I think having to be nothing or censure is a terrible position for anyone to be in. And it doesn't, doesn't help the community and what we're trying to do for the community here. So did you have one thing to say, Tyler? Okay.
Well, yeah, just I mean, I completely understand what you're saying. I do think if my understanding of it, I think I was speaking within the context of us dealing with this moment, and you were saying it could spin out of control because it could suddenly involve more people. I think if we're having a like a discussion of board member conduct that has been the subject of complaints, rather than it being starkly limited to, like, essentially, if anybody is submitting a petition, that petition should become I guess what I'm saying is any petition should become an item of discussion in a meeting that then there is public comment on. Or if somebody, even if one stakeholder submits a complaint, that complaint should be something that we discuss and have allow for public comment and have board comment on. Whether that then what follows that is a censure vote or something like that. It is important to me to make sure that every stakeholder knows we prioritize listening to their voices and prioritize their voices over our own. And I realize I say that as I've spoken twice while Alessandro's had his hand up. So
Okay.
I realize I'm being hypocritical.
I'm about to go to public comment. I typically we have this is a discussion possible action. Is there any motion, or do we want to hear from the public and then make a motion?
Do that.
What?
Oh, I mean, I think we could hear from the public. I would vote for that at least first.
Okay. All right. With that, all right. So we will go to, and let's see, we're at 7:43. Let me see. How many people in the public are intending to comment? If you can all raise your hand, I think it will go in order, and I can call on you in order and get a sense of our time limits here. Let's see, I'm sure we're going to go over our meeting, but good. Okay. Well, if there's 5, there's 10, it depends. We could do like 1 minute per person, up to about 10 people. And if it gets over that, we'll go down to 30 seconds. All right. So Alessandro, go ahead. Everyone keep it to under a minute. All right.
Darcy, your body language and your facial expressions speak volumes. In the previous agenda item, the way you came across informs me that you are not fit to continue leading this meeting, and I propose that somebody else on the council lead this meeting. Thank you.
Okay. There you are.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wanted to circle back to Tad's comment for a second. We brought this up initially. The whole point of this was we were talking about a noose imagery being posted on someone's porch, which other people saw. Tad having reposted it on his Instagram without blurring out the username of the person. And Tad just now in this meeting said that if we were to go down this route, 8 out of 10 council members would have issues. Am I understanding that 8 out of 10 council members are okay with noose imagery? Like, was that a threat from him so you don't remove him? This is sounding more like a scary movie every day, guys. I mean, I just want a council that represents the neighborhood, that is like just and looks out for us. And I'm just really confused why any of this is happening, why we're spending time on this instead of actually improving the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Mercedes C.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for this time. In general, I do feel that people's lives should be private, and this time would be better served to improve our community. I've lived here for 5 years. I've attended several of the various neighborhood council meetings, and I enjoy hearing what's going on and being active in that process. However, I think that the recent actions do need to be taken seriously as a community member. I think that if you're a grown person with knowledge of U.S. history, and how this country was founded, and to justify that act as an art project, or be defensive about it, or be defensive about how other people are receiving it, then that is a huge concern, since that was set in a private, in a public setting for other people to see, that person made it a public act. And so I do think that creating a forum seems more like a Band-Aid to the situation when we need to talk openly about the person who, and I am getting emotional. I didn't think I was going to, because I heard the other callers comment. I said, I'm not going to be emotional when I start to speak. But just talking about it, I think that if you have not lived that experience and those images being reflected over and over, then perhaps it's hard to understand why it is so emotional. But I think also to not acknowledge that other people might have an emotional response is in fact a problem as well, and that is the issue that I'm having with this. So I do think that time needs to be spent to have the best people representing our council, because this is a very diverse neighborhood that serves a lot of different people. I would like to feel a little bit easier about who has the best interest of the community at a whole in mind moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Garcia. Where'd she go? Does anyone know? All right. Okay, Caleb. I'm going down the list. Here we go. Caleb, can you hear us? Can you speak?
Yep, I'm here. I think in regards to the way the particular item is written, I agree with a lot of stuff that Tyler was saying earlier. It's definitely obviously a mutually exclusive situation. It is, I think, incumbent upon any body that represents the public right now to be seriously reconsidering how they think about racial justice, how they bring folks who are impacted to the table, to reimagine how you're going to interact with spaces and infuse racial justice and equity into those spaces. But what I would also say is that in regards to some of the other comments about removal or about Tad getting on and saying that 8 to 10 other people would be implicated, I also sort of agree with what Tyler was saying in the sense that, like, if 8 to 10 people are implicated, then 8 to 10 people should be considered. There should be some sort of restorative justice process where people are held accountable. Like, you are still elected to public office, and there has to be that, And what I saw in all those threads was nothing but gaslighting. It was folks that are not validating any of these folks' experiences, and these folks are elected and representing the public, so that has to be addressed seriously. And I think you do need to reconsider some of the policies, and maybe you do need to redraft some things. And I know it might be messy and overwhelming, but it seems like that's something you need to seriously consider.
Thank you. I'm gonna go out of order now with Elizabeth. I think we lost you. Are you there?
Hi, yeah, I am. I think
okay.
I don't know what happened. I agree with everyone that's spoken before me. I think having someone who is a neighborhood elected do something so overtly racist and say that they're the victim is despicable. I think the real victims here are all of the people of color, particularly Black people who live in Echo Park and had to see something like that. I think that's what's scary here, not, feeling like you're a victim of some sort of cyberbullying. I appreciate that, the neighborhood council is willing to kind of go through the process to remove him. And I hope that you all will support that. And I think this is disgusting on Tad's part, and I won't support any business or anything else that he has to do with.
Okay, thank you. Ray?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say that I agree with everything that was stated prior. And I find it interesting that Tad, once again, instead of using the opportunity to take responsibility for his words and his behavior, instead tries to throw out there that 8 of the 10, board members would also be held accountable. But yet he still shows no even basic empathy or compassion for the people that he has upset, and instead tries to change the direction of the conversation instead of saying, you know what? Yes, I did do something wrong. What do I need to do to make amends? I mean, these are basic things you learn as an adult. And still, I guess he's struggling with that. I don't quite know what it is, and I don't want to presume what his intentions are, but I mean, it's very obvious that he needs to resign. He is not capable of representing people. And I'm sorry if I sound upset, but I'm just been dealing with this my entire life, and I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of people like him trying to say that they speak for the people and that they're representative and they support movements like Black Lives Matter, but obviously don't do anything other than voice support instead of doing the internal work that's necessary to actually show support. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just as a point of information for the audience, I very strongly cautioned our committee members that we are not going into the merits of the items. And this is about format for how to discuss it. And there's not supposed to be a defense of what or wasn't said. And so to the extent that people are being frustrated that people are not going into that, that is the way this meeting was set, because we want to discuss the best way to go forward to then talk about the merits of this. So if that's not clear, I apologize for that. Annie Wyrick, I think, is next.
Hi again. I agree with everyone who's spoken before me. And I just think it's disgusting that Tat won't even show us his face. Like, again, it's just so overwhelming and so disgusting that these things that happen in like the deep South are happening in California, are happening in LA, in Los Angeles, in the city. And it's just like things that bothered my grandfather, things that bothered my father, things that will probably bother my nephew are still happening. Like, it's just like, it's so disgusting. And it's so dismissive of you all, and especially of Tad, to just try and distract us, to try and not take accountability or responsibility for his actions publicly. The things that he's posted are for public consumption. It's public domain. Anything you post on Nextdoor, on Instagram, on Twitter, it's all for public consumption. Those are not private platforms. So I yield my time.
Okay, thank you. Galaxy S9.
Yes, good evening. Luisa Maropoulos, 45-year member, community stakeholder of Echo Park. I'm hearing all these words and I'm sad as I think to myself, where was all this anger when the Echo Park Improvement Association clapped because LAPD kicked Rodney King's ass? Where were these people in their outrage when they clapped because our community children were getting shot down by the LAPD as they were being pointed out as being gang affiliated when they were not? If you're looking for criminals, racists in this community, you should be looking at the Echo Park Improvement Association, not these people that are here on this board. The Echo Park Improvement Association board sat on this Echo Park Neighborhood Council for the first 9 years, 10 years of its conception. After that, it was followed by a guy that worked for a council office guy that wanted to do the council office work out of our area. Then it was taken over by community people, and for whatever reason, I wasn't a member then, it got shut down. All I know is that the people that are currently on this board have been the best board members I have seen since the birth of this neighborhood council, which was April 16th of 2000 or 2002. I get confused with the ending years. And it really saddens me. People talk about history, then learn your history, because what you're saying is, oh my gosh, I read the post too, and I'm not saying that they're right, but what I can and did see is that a lot of people instigated a lot of the stuff that was written. There was stuff written about me too. I'm not a board member yet. I was called a crackhead. I was called crazy. You know what? I will take that to the COVID lockup. people are going through a lot of stress and disorder right now. And you know what? I don't hold grudges, but you know what, people? You need to look into your history of this neighborhood council. And it really saddens me that instead of being united, we're not going to start fighting amongst each other. I think that's wrong. Our energy should be focused on who the real attacking people are. And it's not the people on this neighborhood council board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Brianna.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, there's a big echo. Try again.
I was trying multiple audio.
No, that's good. It's good.
Sorry if I missed this. I had to step away earlier. I'm wondering if the Echo Park Neighborhood Council is just an advisory body to the city, why is it that we can't adopt different removal procedures? And if you covered that, if you could just briefly explain what the city attorney's argument is about why we can't have, for example, a removal procedure that's driven by stakeholders and not entirely in the hands of the board. And then secondly, if you could, I just couldn't find this information online, but you can direct me there or tell me what it is. What are the terms for each of the board members, and when is the next election, so we can all have a sense of like the timing of this?
Okay, wow. As I said, not have to have a back and forth, but a brief informational query is okay. The first question about, we are an advisory body. We are still considered a city body. And so the city attorney and the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment promulgate rules we are to follow. Beyond that, you know what, if you want to send me an email, I can get more into the details and try to get a better answer. I'm working it out as we go as well. Secondly, we just changed our bylaws. So we used to have 2-year terms, then we're trying to get 4-year terms, but we're staggering them and we're in the beginning. So our current board members, some have 2-year terms and some have 4-year terms. And the best way to see it is if you go to any of our Board of Governors agendas, we list each representative. And if they have an asterisk by their name, they have a 4-year term. And if they don't, it's a 2-year term. So our next election is next spring. So anyone who's in a 2-year term seat is going to be voted out or voted in or out in April, May of next year. And then for 4-year seats, it would be 2 years after. So that's where you'd find that information. Next, Sandra Madeira. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Hi. So I'm a 10-year Echo Park resident, and I know we're talking about more like how we're going to address this. And I want to bring it back to what Tyler said. I agree with his idea to try to record what was said in the different petitions, the online petitions, so that people's will can be recorded. What the actions and the images of what happened can also be recorded into the public kind of domain, and it can remain a record, because even if right now the city won't allow you to just get rid of a member because of their bad behavior, perhaps the rules can be changed and something can happen later. So I agree with that idea, and I'd like to put my support behind that.
Okay, thank you. Tia Manzo.
Hi again. Okay. Sorry to take up more time. I wanted to circle back to Louisa's comment real quick regarding why I wasn't in the 92 riots. I was 2 years old at that time, so that's why I wasn't there to try to speak out about that. At the end of the day, there's horrible things happening everywhere all the time, and I know that's sad, but all I can do is focus on what I can control and what I can affect. And what I can affect is I'm a homeowner here in Echo Park, and I'm a resident, and I want to see my neighborhood help me and help my fellow neighbors be the best it can be. And right now, I don't feel like it is doing that. And that has nothing to do with me trying to follow a specific cause. I don't know any of these men specifically, and I don't care to know them, but all I can say is the behavior that I've seen, that I've personally witnessed, has been just inexcusable and very aggressive. And that's all I have to say. I yield my time.
Thank you. I don't see any more hands. Is there anyone else in the public who wants to speak before I shut that down and go back to the committee? Hold on. Ray? Let's see.
Okay. I'm sorry. I did mean to comment on this earlier, but obviously got a little carried away. But I would agree with the sentiments that Tyler has echoed, in that sensitivity training and a forum wouldn't necessarily be the best approach. Those are definitely things to do as a proactive measure. But I don't think that then it would necessarily address the community's concerns, which I think have been pretty clear, though the protocols currently in place may hinder that, which is to have Tad and Chris both at least those resign. That's it.
Oh, okay, thank you. Farah Mars, I'm sorry, I'm reading things. Did I do it right? Sorry, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. I'd like to say, as a resident of the city of Los Angeles, that I'm very concerned about officers of the Echo Park Neighborhood Council having placed a noose in a publicly visible place on their homes, and then, having tried to minimize the significance of this. I would call upon Tad to resign from the Echo Park Neighborhood Council. I think it's important, especially at this time when there have been several people who have been found dead in nooses in Southern California, that we do not condone even a joke by someone who is in office in a government position. I would encourage him to do what he can to also reassure the community that he won't take this lightly or make a joke of it going forward. But for right now, I think it's important that the neighborhood council not only censure him, but ask him to resign. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, Annie, you've spoken, so I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Be brief, please, and then we're going to move back.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Farah Mars had to say about like him being able to like kind of be forgiven or have a chance to talk about what he's done. Like there's no joke about this. There's no joke about being lynched. There's no joke about Black people being murdered in cold blood and no one being held accountable for these murders and these deaths. There's no excusing that behavior. I think I should really listen to us. And to the old lady who spoke before, I wasn't even born when the riots happened, but I will tell you this, my parents owned a business in South Central and their business didn't get touched because they were for the people, and that's what you guys need to be, for the people.
Sorry.
My name is Sarai.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm new to Echo Park and I wasn't going to say much, but to make me angry in less than an hour is something that is out of the ordinary for me. I just want to note that the agenda was already changed up. If you were innocent of worry to appropriately respond to any of these actions, you would strongly advocate the stakeholders to measure.
All right. It looks like we're out of public comment. All right, going back to committee comment. Sorry, I'm just doing clean up here. All right, Tad, did you want to have a right of reply on this?
Yes, I do. As I have said on multiple occasions, I am very sorry for any pain caused by what people have seen on my property. It seems as though there needs to be a conversation about that. And I think if you would like to know what my point of view is or discuss it with me further, or simply tell me what you think of me, please email me at tadepnc@gmail.com and I'll be happy to have a conversation with you. I just want to say that the narrative that has been promoted is not I am to get into close in this other venue. I know it's very hurtful along the lines of restorative justice and to explain to people how they can make amends. So please email me at tadepnc@gmail.com if you'd like to have a discussion about this and what the remedies are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee discussion or a motion? Because we're at the end, we're over time on this item. What a possible way to go forward is. If not, we can have a separate discussion about this. Yes. And with a caveat that any proposal we're gonna have to run by the city at this point, but
right.
Go on.
It seems to me like setting aside time at our next board meeting. Well, it's a little difficult. We already know there are 2 censure letters, and we know that that censure is goes to removal. There has been a request. There has been a large request from stakeholders and people interested in this for removal. We know the way to get to removal is censure, then removal, and we know that there are requests for censure already in place. So it seems to me, in some respects, that at the next meeting we prepare and make space for a lot of people to weigh in on the censure requests that have already been placed, and up to and including if there are other people that stakeholders feel ought to be censored, that they are given a chance to speak to that. Or alternately, we make a item in our next board meeting to discuss the petition we're given, or something like that. But it seems like we've already been given a lot from the community of what they're directly asking for and what they're directly wanting to talk about. So I think the most efficient thing to do is allow them to speak in response to us discussing that, as opposed to trying to broaden it out. Now, it seems, but I don't know if that's useful, or if it's useful to make the petition be an item that we're discussing and where there are 80 plus people doing public comment, but also like there are 60 plus people who need to be allowed to have public comment and talk about this. So it seems like what we're talking about is how can we best help all of the people present right now speak their piece to the entire board, and which is totally valid. That seems like setting expectations more so than it is finding out how to structure that.
Well, and honestly, that was my thinking, because if we put it on as a line item on our next board of governors, and we have financial items, we're probably going to have several planning land use, because that's all backed up. If there's a lot of people who want to speak, we're not, at some point we're going to be like 20 seconds, everyone's going to feel very like they haven't been heard. So maybe it's better to call a special meeting. I know we've already been calling a lot of special meetings in the COVID thing, and we only have so much time because we're all, volunteers. However, maybe we should set up a special meeting to devote to this, or issues related to this so that people have more time.
I would make a motion that we have a separate entire board meeting for exactly that, of like everybody, like a board meeting where it's in addition to the meat and potatoes stuff that we always do. I make a motion that we have a special meeting that is the entire board.
Okay. I'll second that, and I'll add that we want to make that exactly 30 days from today if the two censor motions were filed today.
Well, Mo, I wouldn't say 30, I would say at least 30 days, because we're gonna have to figure out what works for people. And also we have to get it to the city. It may be a couple days leeway, but.
So just to clarify, I think we're talking about two different meetings.
Yeah.
One would be to discuss the censures, but an earlier meeting, a special meeting to discuss the petitions.
Yeah, by my understanding of it, our next board meeting will take place before we would be allowed to vote on censure. Is that correct, Darcy?
Correct. It would be at least 30 days from today and probably a couple days more given things. Sorry.
Yeah, so since we know, so we know that our next board meeting, we will not be able to vote. So we won't be able to talk about the censor things at our next regular board meeting. So it does seem like we need to have a meeting that is just for the stakeholders to be able to, essentially a stakeholder focused meeting that is, you get to talk at us and tell us things and engage us. And then from that, if additional, again, if 8 other people need censure, we do that. But like, unfortunately, the easiest thing to do would be to have censure at the next meeting, and then we talk about it in the context of that censure. But the city won't allow us to do that at our next meeting. So it seems like we're going to essentially at our next meeting, if we don't have a separate meeting to discuss it before our next meeting is going to be doing like funding requests and pluck meeting, and every item is going to be, the public comment is going to be people wanting to talk about this and finding that the only option to do so. So it seems to me like we should have a separate meeting so that people can talk to their representatives about it. Whoop, we lost Darcy. I talked her out of existence.
I would like to add that if there's other people that need to be looked at, that everybody gets scrutinized. I don't know the 8 to 10, but I just want to feel, like everybody laid everything out on the table and we can move forward, without anything over our, without any clouds over us anymore. So that's the goal. I mean, there's so many people that are just spending a lot of their time trying to be helpful and beneficial. I just want to get beyond this. So the fastest way to that is what I'm hoping for. Darcy,
I'm sorry, I lost my internet connection and I missed the last 30 seconds, so I apologize.
It was from me, it was all just more of the same. Yeah, and Thomas just made the correct point that like the sooner we get everything, any complaints about everybody just all out, we can start to process it procedurally and move on, is my understanding of what you were saying, Thomas.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the only thing I would say is like, if we're going to have a special meeting, it seems like if there's 2 motions to censure on the table and we if we let everyone know if there's any others to try to get them in this week, we could have a special meeting that encompasses all that and have a long discussion. 1, 2, 3, 4. After, so like the week of August 10th? Because doing a special meeting, like, right before a board meeting, we're not really, I don't know if that's going to be helpful or possible given all the other meetings we have.
I mean, I would strongly encourage we do it as soon as feasibly possible, because again, if we have it after our regular meeting is going to be a real mess of a situation, because there are so many people who are rightfully very passionate about this, and if we don't, I understand it's packing more stuff in, but the alternative is people feeling like we're not being responsive to them, and they're just going to be mad and talk about it in areas that are just going to be further slowing things down.
I understand. I'm realistically looking at, we have a week of committee meetings. We have a big town hall, July 20th. I guess we could do it, later that week, maybe. I mean, I don't know how much we can get all the board to come to these meetings. It's a big, so I guess it's possible. Maybe I'll send an email out and asking people's availability. I'm saying, do you think there's a huge benefit to convening a special meeting where we have limited discussion, or possibly none, depending on what the city says, as opposed to waiting to the censure motions that we'd hear like early August?
From my perspective, yes, because I think the circumstances are such that we owe it to stakeholders to let them talk to us. They're limited in their ability to do that, because we all are right now, but more so even than we are. So like, if it essentially is a meeting that is almost entirely just public comment, I think that is valid, and is what people are asking for a chance to participate in.
Okay.
That's, again, just me.
Okay. So that's a motion. So there's a motion to have a special meeting to address this in some format we're not sure of as soon as possible, preferably before the board meeting. Is that the motion?
Yeah.
I'd like to
there was a
clarify
second?
the motion by suggesting July 21st is the meeting date.
July 21st is the Tuesday before, right?
That's
Okay.
the Tuesday before our regular board meeting.
Okay. All right. I will briefly go to public comment. Annie, that's the motion on the table, and then we're going to vote on that. And yes, Annie?
Yeah. I just also want to echo what Elisandro said with Darcy also resigning. Your tone and your approach to us was incredibly invalidating, insensitive, and dismissive. I yield my time.
Okay. Sorry. Lauren, hold on. Sorry. Lauren, go ahead.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Because I can't see it on this. So back to the motion on the floor and what Tyler said. It's my understanding that there is a tentative town hall set up on the 28th, I think you said. Do we think in this climate anybody's going to attend that? We have no more pressing business than hearing from our constituents about something that is lighting up this petition. We don't listen to them immediately at our peril. And I think that anything less implicates and tarnishes the whole board. It's going to be very difficult, I think, for the public to trust us at a forum if we haven't got this seized and settled.
So Lauren, to reply factually, I think it's really on the table that we are going forward. We have Jackie Goldberg locked down, which is, not something we could repeat for July 20th, with a plan to have a forum limited to stakeholder input on the possible reopening of schools during COVID. So that is in the works.
I appreciate that, but I have a hard time believing that a city official will appear at anything we do until we resolve this.
Okay. I'm going to go to Galaxy S9. I don't know where that went.
I think that was Louisa, and somehow we lost her, I think.
Okay, I'm going to go to TM Manzo.
Hi, yeah.
I don't think Tad should be setting the date for the time in which we will be discussing things that might be discussing the topic of removing him. That seems like a huge conflict of interest to me. I mean, we're not talking about like ambiguous comments that could be construed in multiple ways. We're talking about literally putting a noose on an object for everyone to see and then bragging about it on Instagram and screenshotting the people and putting their personal information up on Instagram and mocking them despite the info they've gotten. So I don't think he should be deciding any amount of information about what's going on. And I don't think Chris should be deciding that either. I don't know where he is, but I don't want him involved in that.
Okay, thank you. Galaxy S9.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is the old lady again. First of all, to me, this is now starting to sound like a witch hunt. And it's reminding me of the Penny Dreadful series that I'm watching on Showtime right now. It's incredible how people are so quick to attack each other now without even getting to know what the heck they're attacking, except what they're reading on what we will call a Cheeseman app like Nextdoor. All you see is people attacking each other and going at each other. All sense of decorum, as far as, I mean, it just seems like all sense of decorum has gone out the window. The stakeholders are up in arms, but three people here in particular are the ones that are the bad guys. To me, that's a witch hunt. And it's just a sad thing to see. Again, I can't say enough about how sad. And I'm sorry that people are going out of their way to personally attack you. It's a big difference when someone's saying something to your face. Because I'm sure that if they were in your face, they wouldn't be saying half the stuff they're saying. It's a nice way to be able to hide behind the screen and talk and talk. But there will be a day, hopefully, when we will all be able to sit and talk face to face and hopefully wear our mask and do it. Till then, boy, people, you don't know what you guys have started. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we are running out of time. I'm going to look for someone who hasn't spoken yet, and then I will circle back to people with their hands up, and I'm going to start to limit it to 20 seconds so we can have a vote on the motion on the table. I see Andy has not, spoken yet. Andy, go ahead.
Yes. Hey, thank you for having me speak for a moment. I just wanted to offer a few small thoughts. While I'm absolutely not condoning any of the things that were expressed on Nextdoor by board members or stakeholders on the neighborhood council, I will say that both Tad and Chris and you too, Darcy, have put in countless hours for multiple years on the neighborhood council to better the community. So I think people coming in now are obviously outraged for great reasons. But it needs to be known that all three of these people have contributed a lot of their volunteer time to make the neighborhood a better place. So to echo the sentiment that it is a bit of a witch hunt, I think given the appropriate form, it would be great to have the dialogue rather than just have the outrage. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, so we're going back to all right, I'm going to call on everyone. You're going to have 20 seconds. Everyone I see now has spoken already. I'm going to give you all 20 seconds each once you actually come online. And then we'll go back to committee. All right, Annie Wyrick. Sorry, I'm trying to, the Zoom. Okay, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I also agree that Tad shouldn't have any say in when the next date for a council meeting is made, him or Chris or any other person that's tied to Purgatory Pizza. I think there's obviously a conflict of interest. And also with Galaxy 69 making idle threats and passive aggressive comments, just stop. You're too old for that. Calm down. It's disgusting. And you want to talk about decorum and chisme, don't reduce us down to gossip. This is not gossip. These are real issues. People are being murdered. People who look like me are being murdered. People who are in my family are being murdered. So don't reduce us down to that. It's not us against them. Like, be on the right side of history. Be anti-racist. Anything that isn't anti-racist is blatantly racist. You guys should all know that. I yield my time.
Okay. TM Tyler Manzo? Hold on, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, 20 seconds. All right. Yeah, I agree. My message back to Louisa was, again, just because multiple bad things have happened doesn't mean we can't talk about this one specific thing. And this thing affects all of us. And I don't know. It just feels like there's a big conflict of interest here. I don't know what's going on here.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mercedes.
Hi. I do agree with there needing to be the dialogue for stakeholders. I don't condone attacks or the back-to-back sort of name calling and things of that. I think we're all grown, and I think we can have a dialogue without doing that on, I don't want to say sides, because it really shouldn't be sides. We're part of a community, and I think we can all talk as grown-ups. However, I do feel like, as I said before, this issue is one that is significant and deserves the dialogue around it, and that, any emotion coming from stakeholders should be taken seriously, because it is an emotional and a sensitive issue to many people, and just an acknowledgement would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm looking. Sarai?
Sarai, can you hear me?
Sorry.
I understand where many other people believe that this comes out of anger, but this isn't a witch hunt. It's a very educated opinion about the status of our country and where we lie on that spectrum. I would be fired for much, much less. And I also believe that I contribute a lot to the many jobs I keep to live in Echo Park. And I believe that it can't end at dialogue. That's it. I yield my time.
Thank you. Faramaz? See.
Hi, I'd like to add, given what the one of the previous speakers said, that I'm not making any personally disparaging statement about TAD. I'm asserting a principle that people in leadership positions in city government need to be people who have the confidence of the community. And when someone does an action like this, that especially at this moment in time, it's just not consistent with being no construed comment is a personal vindictive and attack on anyone. I would apply this
So the motion, having heard, is to convene a special meeting to discuss in some format that we were going to have to run by the city, frankly, and I have my doubts if it'll be allowed, but without a censure motion, if we're going to discuss specific board member conduct as opposed to a general discussion of the code of conduct and how that applies and how we might rewrite it. Or we could do both. Tyler, did you have?
There we go. Yeah, two thoughts, a question and a thought in terms of what was coming in and things, and I understand your point that it is difficult talking about a thing when the city says we can't talk about the thing unless we can't talk about what's being censored until there is a censure vote, which we can't do until after. I completely get that. Like that might be tricky. So I do wonder if
called due process. Sorry, everyone, but
yeah,
I don't know. Government is slow and painful and inefficient, and
Right.
doesn't, okay.
So what I was wondering is if it might behoove us to use this as a way, like essentially what it seems to me like we need to do is something that allows people to have public comment, which is primarily really what the purpose is to be like, you can yell at us. That's okay. We can be yelled at. Allow people to do that. And then from that, we're going to take it in. And we understand broadly that needs to be in a separate meeting. If it's, I wonder if there's any value in being like, this is in the guise of like, how can we better update our rules and things to reflect your concerns? And in that model, then we're not talking about the thing. We know our constituents and stakeholders are going to talk about it. But if the meeting is, how can we update our rules to better reflect the concerns of the community and their needs, so that going forward, either incidents like this or the permutations of it in terms of like how we move on once an incident like this happens are better addressed. Might be at least a way to structure it so that the meeting has a point, at least on paper, that is working towards something.
I mean, that sounds good to me. We could talk about the general overarching principle and then come up with examples, and then also, of course, that's the general topic, and the public, we are more controlled in what we say than what the public says. So
right, and I think as long as we're like, there are motions, or we can't discuss it until like city attorney is effectively gagging us on this. That does not mean we can't listen. We're happy to listen. Right. We can't respond. I think being very blunt and direct about that repeatedly throughout, and just understanding that like still people will be mad and they have every reason to be, and like that's fine. Like I think we can all handle that and carry on the business of it. So as long as people know that it's not like we're ignoring you, it's more we're not allowed to respond to you.
Right.
Is frustrating, but also the truth.
Okay, so it sounds like it's a motion to have a special meeting to agendize the general topic of the code of conduct, what it does and doesn't apply to, our expectations of board members, how we can rewrite the rules, and also bring in specific examples of board member conduct that we can discuss as to what's appropriate and have the public comment on.
Well, and also the only thing I would add to that is, if there is a way to formalize in a petition from stakeholders as being a method for them to have something become something that is discussed. I don't know if we've gotten petitions in the past, but it certainly seems like if a petition comes through, regardless of what it's on, from stakeholders, that's something that should rise to the level of something that becomes a line item on an agenda.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And if we can more formalize it, even if it's like with Thomas on the website, like putting in a place where people can like link up their, I mean, at this point, I'm pretending to be a Silicon Valley disruptor, but like if people can make petitions and submit it to us, and that is effective, I think that's great.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
The only other question I had is there a way to have, I think Lauren's point about the public meeting about schools is incredibly valid. I don't know that how comfortable anybody is going to be feeling in that meeting. And I also don't know how effective it is in that meeting having any possibility of that getting sidetracked or derailed by unrelated topics. Is there any way we could have this special meeting before that instead of the day after it?
Well, next week we have, I think, 4 meetings. No, let's see, 1, 2. No, maybe we don't. Oh, wait, it's all because our month's wrong. Yeah, we have 2. I don't know. I guess we'll have to go back and talk and look at what we can possibly do, you know?
Yeah.
In terms of, we're not going to set the schedule tonight. Okay, that's not going to happen.
Sure.
We're going to have to work that out among everyone.
Well, I'll second
and then
if there's not a second.
To do the type of hearing we're talking about. Okay. Basically, we've already covered this. I guess I see 2 hands. I'm gonna please 20 seconds. Brianna.
Hi again. Just circling back to the issue I raised before. Can we add to an agenda, or can someone on the board look into what procedures we can adopt to give the stakeholders more control over removal? I understand there's like a due process concern. It sounds like you're saying the due process concern is coming from the city attorney. I would love to know more about that to the extent you can share it. Like, I don't think that is a bright line clear test. I think it's a balancing test, due process, and I think it's supposed to be in proportion to the nature of the benefit that the person's being deprived of. So a board committee seat is different from like welfare benefits. So I'd like to understand why it is we can't have our own removal proceedings.
Fair enough. We'll try to explain it better as we get more knowledge at the next meeting. Lauren?
Yeah, hi. Just to Tyler and Mo, since it's your motion on the floor, I'm wondering, is part of this to give the maximum amount of time for public to speak? I personally think that is the most important thing, and that any other business be secondary. Could you clarify what you meant, please?
If it's okay with you, Darcy.
Yeah, sure.
That is my intention. Is essentially my understanding of it is, if we make a meeting that is explicitly saying we're going to discuss, for example, the petition, that the city, there's a very real possibility that the city attorney will tell us we're not allowed to have that meeting if there's not a censure, a motion for censure attached to it. So to my mind, if we have a meeting that is explicitly of, we want to know how we can better improve our code of conduct, and towards Brianna's point, represent the community's interests, then that to me feels like it is inviting public comment in a way that will enable the stakeholders to talk to us and us to listen. There is my hope.
Can I say something too?
Yeah, go ahead.
I suggested the July 21st because I think the point is well taken that we should get on with the real business and work of this board instead of being distracted by a conversation of this nature that really interferes with our work. And knowing the schedule and knowing that this important town hall from the schools and libraries and community organizations meeting is coming up,